Ireland today has fewer people than it had over 170 years ago, and it is not normal. Over the same 170 years, Europe exploded in population. Industrialization reshaped cities, farming became more efficient, and food became more reliable. Across the continent, population grew rapidly. Almost no country in modern European history suffered a population collapse on this scale. And what makes Ireland truly unique is that it never recovered. Even today, generations later, the numbers are still missing. So the question isn't why Ireland didn't grow. The real question is what was done to Ireland and who is responsible for it. To understand that, we have to go back to the early 19th century, to a country that was already under control and already exploited. By the early 1800s, Ireland wasn't empty or backward, but was packed with over 8 million people living on the island, making it one of the most densely populated places in Europe at that time. Almost all of them were rural, but none of them owned the land. They were tenants who worked on the lands owned by Anglo-Irish and British landlords. The land Irish families rented wasn't large enough to sustain them unless they relied on a single, extremely efficient crop. And that's where the potato came in. The potato itself didn't even come from Europe. It arrived from the Americas in the late 16th century, spreading across Europe as a high-yield, reliable food crop. See, potato wasn't just easy to grow. It produced more calories per acre than almost any other crop. It was rich in nutrients and could grow in poor soil, which is why most Irish became dependent on potato as a main source of food. But things starts to get worse when in 1845, a disease arrived from the Americas, the potato blight. Because of this, potatoes started to turn black and rotten from inside. In the initial year, almost 30 to 40% of crops failed, but still, people thought that things might improve next year. Next year, in 1846, blight returned stronger, which destroyed almost entire potato farming. As most Irish were dependent on potato as their primary source of food, were left with nothing. With no land ownership, no alternative crops, and food prices hiking, millions were left starved. Between 1846 and 1851, around 1 million Irish people died. Some from starvation, many more from diseases their bodies could no longer fight. And the worst year was 1847, remembered simply as Black 47, when almost 400,000 people died. But the population decline didn't stop with death. See, for many who survived the famine, staying in Ireland wasn't possible anymore. Food prices were far higher than wages, and many couldn't even pay rent, let alone buy enough to eat. With the fear that famine could return, large numbers of Irish decided to migrate to other countries. Those who left were mostly young adults, usually in their late teens and 20s, people strong enough to travel and young enough to start again elsewhere. Between the late 1840s and early 1850s, around 1 to 1.5 million people left the country. Most went to the United States and Canada, while others moved to Britain or were sent to Australia. Around 50% moved to USA, 25% to Canada, 15 to 25% to Britain, and rest to Australia. What made this migration so damaging was not just the number of people who left, but who they were. These were the years when families would normally form and children would be born. When those people left, Ireland didn't just lose population, it lost its future generations too. Although famine almost ended by the early 1850s, people kept migrating. Almost 3 million people left Ireland between 1851 and 1911. And the obvious reasons were land, work, and lack of security from any other such famine. But all of this could have been handled much better, because Ireland at that time was under British control, and all the supply of food was under their control. At the time of famine, other food crops were being produced, but rather than giving it to starving Irish, they kept exporting it to Britain. At the same time, government relief was limited and often tied to hard labor, forcing starving people to work for food. Although the British government did introduce soup kitchens, they were later shut down over fears that long-term aid would create dependency. When this support was reduced, responsibility was pushed onto local landlords, many of whom chose eviction over assistance, forcing displaced families to migrate. If things were handled in an ideal way, Ireland's population would be around 20 to 25 million today. But still, despite huge population loss, Ireland has the 25th largest GDP in Europe, while being top 3 in terms of GDP per capita, above countries like Switzerland, Iceland, and Norway. And most importantly, Ireland's population is third highest growing population in Europe. If it keeps growing at this rate, Ireland would reach its pre-famine population by 2037. And this is why Ireland still looks the way it does today. Subscribe for more videos like this.